All right. Welcome everybody back to the channel. It's Katya, Katya's Raw Wisdom. And thank you to all the new subscribers. I just want to give a shout out for thank you for subscribing and welcome to you. And I certainly enjoy bringing you some great, interesting interviews and topics to discuss, not only on being an ex-vegan, but also on some wisdom that we can share and you can all benefit from. So today I'm really blessed with the pleasure of having the vivacious Kiki, and it's such a pleasure to have her presence here today with me, and also for her to share her journey on how she sort of went through the transition from being vegetarian to bringing in animal food and how it's impacted on her health and I'm sure all other areas of her life. So Kiki has a lovely channel, and I'm going to put the link down to it after the video so you can go and check that out. But she's basically she loves to bring the message of yoga and beauty and wellness. So welcome, Kiki. So great.
Thanks for reaching out to me. I think Katya and I are in a vegan and vegetarian recovery group together on Facebook, which I have to say has been so incredibly important. You know, we need community support, and to have been so strongly aligned with, for myself, and I imagine for you, with the vegetarian community, with the vegan community, being involved in yoga. I've been involved in yoga since 1982 or 3. I began traveling to India in 1995, to South India, which is mostly vegetarian. And all of my teachers were vegetarian. And so I had a very strong vegetarian support. And I thought I was just on the most amazing, I had the most amazing spiritually and psychologically and emotionally and physically advanced way of eating. And so I had a strong community. It's very hard to break with our community. And so I had so many symptoms of poor health, just a cavalcade, which I can get into them, and to kind of venture out and really feel all alone and almost feel like, am I betraying my community? Am I doing something wrong here? So I found these private Facebook groups. Whatever complaints I have about Facebook, I'd really never been in these private groups before where there's these really strong communities and there's all this community support. So you and I met in there, and it's very hard to start eating meat again and change our ideology around health, because we overdefined health with vegetarian. Even as our health was falling apart, I kept looking for the vegetarian solution and moving into a vegan solution, and just, everything getting worse and worse. So yeah, so we met there, and it's nice to be meeting. Thanks for inviting me on your channel, and I think it's great, what you're doing here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's just such an important message to share, and particularly, as I said, my focus tends to be on women who've been long-term vegans and vegetarians, but also older women who also can share some of the wisdom that they've extracted from making this transition, and also how it affects them as women as they're older, in regard to their hormones, sleep, their mental state, emotional state. So I think it's wonderful knowledge and to share, and for people to learn from. And yeah, so we'd love to hear your wonderful story. So
first off, I would say that not just adding meat or eating some meat or reintroducing a little meat, but eating, for me, high fat meat only with 0 vegetables has removed every single symptom and health concern. And I feel like I have the vitality of that I had when I was 30. And I would say maybe when I was about 35, 36 or something, I started just accepting that I had digestive problems. I had digestive problems as a little girl. And so I always was like, oh, I'm constipated. Oh, what are colonics? Oh, I'll get colonics. Or, oh, I'm not digesting this. And so without really being aware of it, I was always hacking my digestion and trying to, maximize it. And so I was sort of addressing symptoms for about 25 or 20 years. And I guess in the last, really for 10 years, which sounds so long, I had really overall joint pain, body pain, extreme fatigue, sort of inflammation flare-ups in certain joints. And I'd be like, okay, I'm going to take out gluten. Oh, it's a little less. Oops, now I have to take out coffee. Oops, now I have to, obviously I didn't really eat sugar, but it's like, oh, I have to take out all the grains. I have to take out all, like, it's just been terrible. I think that not only was I nutritionally depleted from only eating, grains and vegetables and soy, but I was nutritionally depleted from not having animal fats and not having animal foods. When I was just getting ready, I was like reading about keto, and I was reading about paleo, and I was like, oh, and I was reading Weston Price, and I was like, can I do it? Can I add these foods? And there's a woman that I really admire. I'm like on her email list. Her name is Susan Weed, and she's an incredible naturopath and North American herbs and everything. And I don't read every single one of her newsletters, but she had a newsletter with like a really clicky title, even though she's like a wild earth woman. There's nothing clickbaity about her, but she was like, my list of the top 10 worst health ideas or something like that. And so I was like, oh, wow, what's her list? And she's usually a really positive person. Like, what is her worst health ideas? And she was like, veganism is dangerous. Vegans say they love the animals. And she said, vegans don't know what animals are because they live in cities. They never see animals except squirrels in the park. And if you live with tradition and you live among animals, you have enormous respect for them and their vitality. And the way that you honor them is through ingesting them. And I was like blown away. And I thought, wow, look at our tradition of First Nations and Indigenous people and the utter respect they had for animals and for ruminants, and they sustained their life. People's lives and communities and well-being were sustained through these animals. That was a big turning point for me. And so every little bone broth was my first way in. That was amazing. I'd been cold and shivering for 25 years. And even on a summer's day, and I had bone broth and like I was warm. Now I understand that I had, a low metabolism, not enough fuel to heat my body. So I went from bone broth and started adding, we have this hierarchy as vegetarians of like what we're going to eat. Fish is okay, but maybe chicken, like if it's in the water, or if it doesn't have legs, or if it's a chicken is better than a cow. And I had a lot of associations from traveling to India for many years around eating beef or eating cows. A lot of my close friends that I spoke to and told them what I'm doing, they're like, but you don't eat cow. And I was like, I do. Actually, that's the most nutritious. That's the most nourishing. So I had to get over a lot of dogma, and actually to understand that it really was dogma, and dogma is religion, and doesn't have necessarily any scientific support. So I would say
this was about a year ago, Kiki. Is that correct?
Yeah. A year ago. So maybe with the bone broth, I started tiptoeing in about 2 years ago. So
and what was the really red flags that really made you consider changing your diet? Like, did you hit a point where you just thought, I can't keep doing this any longer. It's not sustaining me. Did you?
I had a rash that would flare up on my face. No one wants a rash on their face. No woman wants a rash on their face. My YouTube channel is about, natural organic living, natural organic, beauty and self-care and wellness. I'm like, what the hell? I have a rash on my face. And I couldn't manage it. And actually, even putting water on it made it worse. So I was like, I can't even put water on it. Like, what can I do? So that was really, and with that rash, which obviously is inflammation, there was just overall body inflammation. Some people might think this is a good thing, but like my breasts were they were like expanding in size. I was like, oh my God, they're so painful. They're so large. And just overall inflammation where I felt like I had kind of lost, I was no longer in dialogue with my health and well-being. It was like on its way to hell in a handbasket, and there was nothing that I could do.
It's interesting you mentioned about the breast, because I also mentioned this in the interview I did last night with a lovely lady. She's also been having some breast issues, but I discovered too, once I started eating animal foods, particularly getting the cholesterol and the fat-soluble vitamins and I had quite fibrous breast tissue, lumpy breast tissue when I was vegan.
Right, what they call the...
yes. And I did actually develop a cancerous breast lump, which I may disappear. But once I started having animal foods and meat and chicken, the tissue became a lot smoother. So I'm just wondering if, and a lot of women don't make that connection. And it's I think it's vital knowledge for women to know that really does have an impact on our breast health,
and
animal foods.
There's almost a war on women's breasts. On the one hand, obviously women are admired and objectified and celebrated and desired because of their breast shape or their breast size. So, and I think one of the most popular high school graduation gifts in the United States for girls is breast augmentation. So this is how important, how overly identified girls and women are with their breasts. Yet, in the name of, mammography and cancer, doctors will tell women in an instant, your breasts aren't important. But you can't tell women their breasts aren't important. And obviously, our breasts are important because that's part of being women, regardless of the size or the shape of our breasts. Our breasts are, are part of being a woman. But we can't sort of objectify women around their breasts and at the same time have an authority say, like, well, your breasts aren't important. You can just lose them. And women have very little leeway to try to, keep their breasts. And the doctors will tell women, don't worry. I've heard this from a few women. Don't worry, after your mastectomy, I'll make your breasts better than what you have. And it's like, no breast is better. Like a plastic surgery breast is not better than the breast that women were born with. That's perfect.
For sure.
Women are perfect.
Yeah. And particularly with the vegan connection, I notice on social media in particular, a lot of young vegan influencers. And, the yoga vegan thing is obviously very much tied together in a sense. And there is noticeably more vegan girls that have the implants. And I'm not saying that because obviously meat eaters do, but it just seems to be the very, very popular influencers do have breast implants. And at the same time, there is also a lot of women waking up who've had them and are now doing explants. But at least, getting this connection that if you're vegan, you might be inviting some issues, the cystic cysts and things like that into you that you don't, it's not necessary, but because we need that cholesterol, we need those animal fats. But,
I mean, I can say that when we have, say, as a longtime yoga practitioner, obviously in in this community, people get injuries, people have pain, people's backs are killing them, their necks are killing them, whatever it is, but they keep doing their yoga, they keep doing their yoga. I was really looking for a movement yoga solution to my body pain and inflammation, or I was looking to other physical, types of movement systems, whether it's Feldenkrais or Alexander technique or, Rolfing, or for these physical problems, I was looking for physical solutions. Eating meat, particularly fatty meat, that was the solution. That has been the solution for skin rashes, joint pain, inflammation, terrible tinnitus, terrible sleeplessness. I didn't know I had anxiety because obviously I have all these tools for managing anxiety because I've practiced yoga and meditation and, mantras and visualizations and everything like that. I really didn't know I had anxiety until I no longer had anxiety. And there's that website, which was very helpful to me. I really looked at a lot of testimonial-based websites as I was making this change and being educated around meat eating.
Yeah.
And Zero Carb Zen is a wonderful website to read a lot of testimonials. And this idea that, well, when you're zero carb, you get this Zen feeling. And that's really true. So because of the animal meats, the high-fat animal meats, my anxiety went away, my hair got thicker, my teeth and gums got stronger, my nails got stronger, and my outlook improved, just everything.
What more could you ask for? They are the most, I think insomnia and is such a widespread issue now, particularly in the US. I know when I stayed there, so many people take sleeping medications, But I was going to ask you, how long did it take you to get to, like you say, you're at the stage now where you're just having a lot of fatty meats and the fats, obviously you've understood, but you didn't start that way? Did you just begin bringing in animal food, still having plans before you got sort of, you realised that fat was a kind of the big key, and reducing more of the plant stuff? How was that for you? What was that?
I would say when I
started, or was it a bit of a transition going through that?
It was a transition. I started with the bone broth, and I absolutely understood, like, okay, the marrow, the bone minerals, the collagen, the cartilage, these are all contain nutrients that are going to build my marrow, my cartilage, my bones, my joints. I'm eating this sort of joint broth, and it's benefiting my joints. That really made a lot of sense to me. And then when I started adding some meat, again, not attracted to beef, still thinking I would never eat beef because of this whole, the sacred cow of India, or really that cows are revered because they provide so much. Cows do, in an agricultural society, a dairy cow obviously should not be killed for meat. A dairy cow should be supported to have a long life of producing milk. So in India, it's very, dairy is an incredibly important source of nutrition. So that's in milk, yogurt, curd, what they call curd, butter, and ghee. And people eat these every single day. And then in the North, India, they make something called paneer, which is kind of like a strained and pressed cottage cheese. So dairy is incredibly important. So yes, of course, there's a lot of lore and dogma and belief to not harm cows because the cows are sustaining society. In India, the Hindu vegetarians don't eat cow, but all the Christians do, all the Catholics do, the Buddhists do, the Sikhs do. And some of the earliest nutrition extensive nutrition studies that were done whereby a British Scottish nutritionist or MD in the late 1800s in India, because the British Crown was sending soldiers all over the world. Indian soldiers were fighting wars for the British in Burma and, through Asia and everywhere that Britain had a footprint, and in South America, the Indian soldiers were going there. So they wanted to know what is the optimal diet for the Indian soldiers. And back in the late 1800s, through this research, they identified, that goiter was an iodine deficiency, that beriberi, that these B vitamin deficiencies caused terrible health problems. So back then, 130 years ago, it was like the South Indian vegetarian diet is the worst diet for health. There are more deficiencies, weaknesses, frailty. And the meat-eating diet of the Northern Sikh, and Sikh, men, right now there's a Sikh basketball player, and he's like 7'6". He's Indian, and he was so tall, or that his father is like 7 feet or something, that he was like put there. Everyone was just like, you have to send your kid to some kind of basketball program. So
it's interesting you say that, because there's an Indian doctor that's just put out an article review, I guess, and he did mention his own mother, who was her health had deteriorated because of her vegetarian diet, and she didn't want to change it really. But he also said that the amount of disease it's escalating so much in India, in heart disease and cancers and all these.
And this was known
from the high carb, high sugar, particularly high sugar. Yeah.
And then I think what's been added to the high sugar is these industrial seed oils.
The oils, that's right. Yeah.
Very affordable in the United States in the 70s and 80s, but in the mid 80s, India sort of threw their hat into the ring and said, we want to farm, use us to farm for the United States. And so India began farming soy, sunflower, corn for oil. And there was something happening in India. They called this the sunflower revolution. So the sunflower revolution meant that now there's going to be this wealth in the country through these big farming relationships to grow these vegetable oils. And simultaneously what that allowed was cheap vegetable oil in India. So the Indians ate very low oil. They ate ghee, but in South India, when I first went to South India, and even today, if you go to a traditional restaurant and you say, oh, can I have some ghee on my mountain of rice? They come over with like a little pot, this big, with a tiny little spoon, and they're like, it's like this much ghee. It's like the amount we would, less than we would even use for like a face mask. That was it. It was an incredibly low oil diet. Yeah. Denise Minger, I think that's how she says her name. She has a really interesting presentation that she gave at like the Icelandic low carb event, which people can find. She's very anti-food pyramid. She tore apart the China study. She's really smart. She's really she's not just doing group think and group speak. So she gave this incredible presentation and she said, yes, high fat, low carb leads to weight loss and all these other benefits. But let's look at these two doctors from an earlier period. One is a weight loss doctor, one is an MS doctor. And they followed their subjects for years, and here's photographs of the weight loss, and people kept the weight loss off forever, and here's data on the MS, and people avoided, and they were like low symptomatic, following these diets, and the diets of these doctors was like, one was called like the rice diet, and one was called like the high carb diet, where literally you could eat white rice and teaspoons of sugar, and these people maintained their weight loss, or they maintained their low symptom or symptom-free MS. But what these were they were incredibly low fat, low oil. So the oil and the fat was like less than 3 tablespoons a day, which is nearly impossible. So if she was saying, hey, look, if you're on these extremes, we have research that says if you're high fat, low zero carb, you will have enormous health benefits. But simultaneously, there's research. If you are high carb, high sugar, almost zero fat, you will have incredible weight loss if necessary and incredible health benefits. Anything in the middle is dangerous. So there's pretty strong theories that when we see, Americans, and I'm sure you have it in your home of Australia, Americans always ate pie. We're like, America is apple pie. We always ate caramel covered apples and donuts and fudge and, maple syrup. Like, we always ate sugar, but we see this huge health change come with not only the introduction of the food pyramid that's higher carb, but these really crap oils that create all this inflammation.
That's right. So, and the great thing is people are waking up. There's more doctors who are debunking these, like you said, the pyramids and the studies and also, and for those of us who are older and lived through a time in the 60s and that, we kind of knew, we grew up knowing life differently. In other words, saturated fat was still used in households. We were still eating that. It wasn't demonized.
Right. My grandparents had a can of bacon fat under the sink, and people ate eggs swimming in bacon fat.
That's right.
They didn't drop dead.
No, but all these links are being made now, which is great.
Yes,
just getting back to your own journey, I was just going to ask you, what, when you said you transitioned first, did you have some vegetables, and what kind of symptoms were still hanging around you felt that really going more zero carb? Because obviously a lot of people are interested now. There's so much attention on this zero carb carnivore thing, and yet people who, like you said, come from vegan or vegetarian, it's almost horrific to the mind to try and contemplate going from to eating meat. And like, how can I do this? It was like a treasure hunt. If they're riddled with inflammation, and I've said this as well, it seems to be increasing absolutely rapid rates of autoimmune problems, gut problems, just inflammatory conditions that people are being afflicted with, and they're searching for something to give them relief, and so experimenting, and so
high pain threshold, and I have an enormous amount of discipline, and I didn't want to capitulate to a medical diagnosis. I didn't want to be told I had fibromyalgia or Epstein-Barr or some kind of, exhaustion disorder or something. I was I'm going to solve this problem. I'm going to solve it myself. So I added the bone broth, and then I was feeling better. And it was kind of on again, off again. Of course, I was like, no sugar, no gluten, blah, blah, blah. I took a ton of supplements, and my boyfriend and I, and he was not vegan vegetarian, he's actually in the organic food biz, and like one of our first, when we really kind of started seeing each other, and we woke up together, he like went in the kitchen and he cooked himself a pork chop, like an organic pork chop, like this thing for breakfast. I was like horrified. I was like, oh my God, I'm dating a werewolf or something.
But then you went to the dark side.
I'm a werewolf. No, I'm a werewolf. So I definitely had his support. So we had just like come to the holidays, and then we were down in Barbados. I was doing a surf and wellness retreat. It was like my 3rd year down there. And then, we kind of stayed on, and it's island life. We're surfing all day and we're drinking rum at night. And we just got back and we were like, okay, from the holidays to the rum, we're done. So we did Whole30. And Whole30 is like no grains, no meat, no dairy, no caffeine, no alcohol. And halfway through Whole30, like day 15, it's a 30-day thing, but we were like scarfing potatoes. We were scarfing sweet potatoes. We were scarfing like still high carb and what I now know is high oxalate. So he ran into some friends of his who are older, like they're older than he is by about 10 years. They're in their 60s. And he was like, wow, you guys look fantastic. Late 60s maybe. And they were like, we're keto. Of course I'd heard of keto and I understood it. And they're like, you got to listen to this podcast. So they sent him a podcast, which was the keto boys or the keto guys interviewing Jason Fung, Dr. Jason Fung, and all the work that he's done with reversing diabetes. And I listened to it and I was like, well, I'm already on a restricted plan. I'm on Whole30. I'm just going to go from Whole30 to ketogenic. And now I'm reading everything on ketogenic. I ordered Dr. Fung's book right away. I literally have read the whole thing in 24 hours. I'm on dietdoctor.com, which is a ketogenic site. I'm listening to all these things. And as I'm looking around about keto and I'm seeing I'm also like, my God, all the cheese. I can't live on cheese. So I start introducing eggs. I start introducing some chicken. My boyfriend is like, pretty much everything we eat, like 90% is home cooked and, well sourced. But it's like, if he's watching a football game at a bar, he's eating chicken wings. So I'm like, you know what? I can eat chicken wings too. So I'm eating chicken. And so I'm like, want to know more about low carb. And I find this website. It's like My Zero Carb Life, Kelly Hogan. And I was like, zero carb, and then she talks about how she's just like driving into fast food joints and getting like 10 burgers.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
Kelly Hogan, if I just might interrupt there, she's been 10 years or something, just me purely.
Even more. And she's
wow.
had 3 children. She went from like lifelong obesity, trying to starve herself to thinness, exercise herself to thinness. Nothing worked. And actually a doctor gave her a pamphlet, kind of an Atkins type diet, very low carb. And then at a certain point, she was like, okay, I'm just going to take out all the carbs. And then her health really flourished. And even now, she says she doesn't even exercise and she's just lean like a whip. And she has 3 kids and she's a school teacher. I think she's an art teacher. She's just go, go, go. She has to wake up early to get the kids in order, to go be at the school all day, So, and I think she had 2 or 3 zero carb pregnancies. And there's zeroing in on health is very popular. It was a popular maybe Yahoo group or Reddit group. And that's an open Facebook group. And because people have really turned their life around with zero carbs, if you mention a carb on that group, you get one warning and then you're out.
Well, of course, that sets up cognitive dissonance for most people because we're told, you'll get scurvy, you're going to have mineral deficiencies, and you're not going to be we need plants. We've been totally brainwashed, and
I know.
Well, again, conditions and societal conditions we've been taught.
That's right.
And
the other thing is, I think it's impacted women even more, which is like, at least my mother and my boyfriend's mother and that generation, and it did trickle down to us, they were like low fat, low fat, low fat, low fat. And, the women of my mother's generation who sort of were raising their children in the 60s and 70s, they were kind of getting a message that they had to diet all the time. They had to be thinner.
Right. The low fat came in, skim milk, low fat yogurts, all that. Yeah.
One day I was, I ran through high school. I ran cross country and track, and my older sister is a great athlete, and she's just, done tennis all afternoon. I've been running all afternoon, or basketball or volleyball, whatever. We came home and we opened the fridge and we were like, low fat cottage cheese, pita breads that are this big, a bowl of cut carrots and celery. We were like, we were like hungry monsters,
I think
So
that's when the Kellogg's Special K and all came out. Remember that with the skim milk, and that was the cereals and the whole push for that.
yeah.
It was that time. So I just go back onto the ketogenic.
Yeah, so I'm transitioning
Yes.
from like keto with egg and cheese. I stumble on these zero carbers. I can't even read it. I'm like, no, that belongs on the dark net. Like, I shouldn't even be looking at that. And then I stumbled on Sean Baker's site, and he had just done some kind of carnivore month or carnivore thing or 3 months.
You did have some improvements when you went the ketogenic way for a while, obviously. Yeah, you had.
It helped the rash. It helped inflammation. My mind was clearer. I had more energy. Then when I first saw Dr. Sean Baker, who's working, who's really instrumental. So many people say, well, I started eating carnivore because I heard Dr. Sean Baker on Joe Rogan. And I'm so like out of the mainstream. I'm like, who's Joe Rogan? I'd never heard of the Joe Rogan show. I had no idea who he was. And so at a certain point, I went to listen to that. But I just thought, like, this guy, Dr. Sean Baker, he's a beast. I don't want to have anything to do with these people. It was really challenging my mind. But I kept getting educated, and I kept, Georgia Ede was very instrumental. She's diagnostic diet, and she's a psychiatrist and a nutritional researcher, and she saw all these health benefits from ketosis. And then she moved towards, I saw her interviewed, and she was like, I don't eat vegetables. And I said, you don't eat vegetables? So I just kept educating myself. I think the low carb conferences, like low carb Denver, low carb San Diego, and everything around that I just really soaked it up. And at a certain point, it was like a slap in the face where I thought, oh my God, I've been doing it wrong all along, and I've harmed myself. And I can honestly say vegetarianism and veganism deeply, deeply harmed my health and made me, and it affected my confidence and my feeling of independence. And that's another thing that I see is that I talked about earlier, like we need the community support, which is why these Facebook groups can be so important. Or going to conferences and things like that. But when my experience, and certainly this is echoed, like if we look at, if you read about the Minnesota starvation study, which I can talk about because I think it's super interesting, or we read about prisoners of war or anything like that, or even under extreme dictatorships when people are hungry and they're on a grain-based diet or they're starving, they're really not able to act independently. And there's fear of authority and fear of kind of stepping out, fear of judgment or rejection or stuff like that. And that's really all kind of biologically encoded to keep us safe in homeostasis, to stay with the group. It's so hard to leave the group. And I can see that I had a really strong need for community approval and validation. And even when I started my YouTube channel, I never wanted to necessarily start a yoga YouTube channel. YouTube was pretty new. I thought it was really awesome. I'd been a professional actress, not only in downtown experimental theater, but I was an actress in film and television and Hollywood films and Sundance award-winning film and other, award-winning independent films. I worked in voiceover actor and a commercial actor, and so I was really attracted to YouTube. I was like, oh, I've been living in a yoga. I've been in a yoga classroom in yoga clothes for like 15 years, and I've just got divorced. I've moved back to New York City. I want the culture. YouTube is where it's at. It's super exciting. And so I wanted to be on YouTube. I wanted to share and unleash my inner charisma. And but I didn't want to share the yoga part. I wanted to share everything else that I cared about, which was like the wellness, the organic self-care, the organic beauty, for women not to be harming themselves with all these, you know, chemicals and plastic and everything like that. And I had so much negative pushback from my yoga community. People were like,
once you started to eat animal foods?
No, once I went on YouTube. So I'm just talking about the need for community support. So when I went on YouTube, many of my yoga peers were talking behind my back or saying to me, like, what are you doing on YouTube? Like, YouTube is for cat videos, and, you know, this is the beginning of YouTube. This is like 8 years ago. Like,
things have changed dramatically.
12-year-olds and cat videos. You know, what are you doing on YouTube? What are you doing talking about beauty? What are you doing talking about organic living? Like, I was really ostracized, and it was painful for me. And I was just sort of like, well, I'm going to soldier on because people care. I have this new community that cares about what I'm sharing. Well, now I'm able to travel the world as a yoga teacher because of my YouTube channel. Because people are like, oh my God, you'll come to, you know, would you come to our yoga? You know, so I had that need that I had when I was nutritionally depleted for community support. I don't have that need now. And I would say that's nutritional depletion.
That's a good point. And I think most people who were vegan, vegetarian, come over to, who are now ex-vegan, that is right up there on the top. They've found their confidence just blooms, their mental state changes where they were, you know, once they were isolating themselves and disconnecting with friends, family, becoming more and more lonely within, but still frustrated because, you know, they wanted to contribute, they wanted to be in the world, and but it, you know, and I think if you've read Leah Keith, I think, book, The Vegetarian Myth, and the reality of chronic vitamin B12 deficiency, anemia, and this, and the effect it has on the brain, and you know, actions, to see it shrinking like this, that was a huge wake up for me as well, because this is where, when you touched on just previously about some damage, I mean, some of it, in her case, she said she's had irreversible damage, particularly spinal damage. And I think you're more at risk of that the older you are. And because I'm over 62, so I'm just like, well, you know, for me, it was the biggest wake-up call for me, like divine intervention, because you don't want to have your later years with your skeleton falling apart and all these things deteriorating, because that's the end. That's where you lose your core, your independence, and your confidence, of course, because you don't
feel. You fall and you break a hip and then you're gone, and you do lose your confidence. And people stop venturing out.
So the mind thing is a big thing for people, and they get their clarity back and their brain functions well. And I just, it's really like night and day. And I think there's so many vegans who will quite readily attack. And I certainly got a lot of it once you come out, because I certainly couldn't keep on being in a public way, you know, promoting raw food and veganism, even though I'm eating meat. I just couldn't do it. I think within 3 weeks I had to come out. But they feel they can attack people, say they did it wrong with it, but they do not have the direct experience themselves of the comparison. And when you don't have that direct experience, it's all postulation, it's all parroting, it's all opinion, and it really bears no weight. It's not until you experience it for yourself and see what being nourished really, really means, and what you're missing as a human being, you know.
And the thing is, too, is that how long has someone felt utterly terrible? You know what I mean? So it's like, well, I have 30 years of vegetarianism. I felt utterly terrible. You know, I had like terrible hip pain, I don't know, 10 years ago or 15 years ago, which I got through. And then it was, you know, or my back or my shoulder or my neck or my wrist, or, you know, it's like, and have digested to feel terrible every single day, every single day, every single day. And then that disappears. That's like manna from heaven. And then to wake up and realize that I had eaten against my natural diet. But what led me to include more fat was there's someone named Mickey Ben-Dor, and he's a paleontologist or something, and he's in Israel. And there's some sites in Israel where there's these big, where there's a lot of information is being gleaned from them of how earlier peoples ate these giant elephants and everything, and how much fat was eaten. And he has a great presentation online where he talks about man, the fat hunter. And he was like, no, man was hunting fat. Humans need fat. We need fat. We need fat. And our brains grew. Homo sapien means like a knowledgeable, the homo, the knowledgeable man or human, because we got these bigger brains and they were built with fat.
Yes. So, well, the brain is I don't know, it's around 80% fat, isn't it? It is made of that, made of cholesterol as well.
So that was influential for me. And then reading and listening to the Paleo Medicina in Hungary.
Yes.
And they do these protocols. They're healing, different immunological diseases and cancer and metabolic diseases and stuff. And they're very high fat. It's like, I think it's 50% of the calories are fat or something. And people that are following these protocols, they're almost like, oh my God, this is too much fat. And I thought, you know what? Let me eat more fat and let me see if I heal more. Like, because I feel that I'm healing from so many deficiencies. I had severe B12 anemia. And I just had this idea like, okay, the gas tank is low, put in more gas. It's like the B12 is low, put in more B12. But with that B12 anemia, there were so many other deficiencies. And there were so many, biochemical processes going on that I can't even understand. So just adding that component, I mean, it did like save my life. I had to do daily injections for 3 months. At the end of the day, I'd just start to droop. I'd be like, oh my God, I'm going back into it was like the Wizard of Oz. I was like, I'm melting. I was like, I need my injection. I need my injection now. And I would give myself that injection. I'd be like, bing.
But of course, it's synthetic. And I'll just comment here that I had to have iron shots early in the day when I was doing the raw veganism. And it was when I had a raw cafe, had the first one in Australia, but also a forum, and I was running that, and I was spending a lot of energy, and I was really in the throes of how miraculous the raw food diet was at that time. It was early days, but it wasn't long. It was the second year when I really started to become pale and weak, and people noticed it between the partner, but eventually I could see it. Pardon me. And, just to walk down some steps and up the driveway, my legs felt like lead. But I eventually had to have injections. And because I refused to eat meat. And I said, my God, girl, you've got to have these injections. But of course, now we're eating it and it's bioavailable. It's absorbable by the body. And it's not synthetically made. And of course, with the vegan thing, we're all taking supplements that are, the chemicals, the way they're extracted.
I spent so much money on supplements. I was like a drug addict chasing a high. I was like, maybe it's potassium, that's going to solve my inflammation. Maybe it's gluta, whatever it's called. It's like, I didn't just buy like a jar of like 30. I bought like the pound size. Things this big. There was no food in my cupboards. It was just all pills and bottles. And I was just trying to do this supplement cocktail. And I was sprouting and wheatgrassing and everything that I thought was, supposed to be the best.
Spending a fortune, like all of us. It's incredible. And that would have contributed probably to malabsorption, like you're saying, you're not extracting these nutrients, so you're still deficient because your body can't deal with these things, and you've probably got, you know, gut permeability going on where, you know, there's inflammation from and actually now they're saying that 50% of the population is B12 deficient, and that includes omnivores too. So it's right out there, isn't it? And you can imagine how that's affecting people mentally and emotionally.
Absolutely. You know, I mean, there's just so much to say, but I was going to say something about, you know, people say, well, I can't be B12 deficient because I take supplements. And I'm like, I took supplements, you know, I took the B12 for whatever, 25 years. Or people are like, oh, there's a lot of protein in quinoa. I just had quinoa, it's high protein. I'm like, higher than what? Rice? Like, you know, there was 5 grams of quinoa in that cup. People are like, oh, I eat eggs, they're high protein. 9 grams? This is not high protein. You know, and it's certainly not, you know, high fat. So yeah, I went away. I did a sailing course on liveaboard on a 45-foot yacht in the Caribbean. My boyfriend and I have started sailing again. You know, I haven't sailed since I was a teenager. He hasn't sailed since, you know, he was in his 20s or something. But we started sailing. We're really enjoying it. So we're doing these courses in the Caribbean. We're living aboard a 45-foot boat with a captain and a crew member, and we're out there sailing. And we're like, oh my God, what are we going to do? We're on this boat. And so we're like, we only eat meat, you know. So basically, we lived on cold cut, you know, we're on a boat. And my boyfriend was a commercial fisherman. And they said that he'd be able to fish because you can really just like trawl or whatever, and you can catch a fish. And so they even had a fishing rod set up. And the captain was like, we're not fishing, there's no time. It's like, wait, we could be eating fish, freshly caught, so nourishing, with ease. But we lived on cold cuts. Unfortunately, we had gone down with like our pockets lined with bacon and like lamb, pork, meatballs. And we still had enough to eat for 3 days. So we were basically on a low fat, high protein, terrible quality protein diet for, you know, 5 days. And we really suffered.
Okay.
We really suffered. And then we were just like achy and our joints hurt and we were like a little irritable and my face was like, I'm not going to say rashy, but it was kind of pre-rashy, like, well, like these areas that are more prone, you know, to rash, kind of getting a little, whatever, inflamed. And I just felt terrible.
The zen started to disappear.
Exactly.
Zero zen.
And then we were like, then I think we were listening to, maybe we were both listening to Sophia from the Paleo Medicina on a podcast, and she was talking about the fat, and we were like, we need fat. And, you know, former vegans and vegetarians, you know, beware, I'm going to talk about fat. So we were sailing, then we took a few extra days in St. Thomas and St. John off the boat, and there was a big, like a fire pit barbecue place or something. And we were just like, give us fat. We were just eating. We're like, where should we eat tonight? We're like, let's go back there. Let's go back there. Let's go back there. We only wanted to eat fat. We were eating brisket with like 2 inches of fat layer sitting on top of an inch of meat. And we were just like craving that fat. And it was so incredibly healing. And in terms of what I'm eating now, you know, Dr. Sean Baker, who I completely admire now, and all these zero carvers and carnivores, I completely understand what they're doing. I'm right there. I'm very grateful for their outspokenness and for everything that they've shared online, because it led me to, you know, great health and vitality and mental outlook. And so there's like, you know, a lot of these carnivores are like, just eat beef, just eat prime rib. You don't need organs and everything like that. And I mean, I definitely feel satisfied eating a prime rib, but I feel like when it cools off, I have less desire to eat it. When it goes room temperature, the fat might cook in a way that I don't digest it well. So now I'm really only eating short rib, which is very fatty beef. I braise them like in a covered pot in the oven for like 2 hours and cover it with water. And it just turns into like the fattiest broth with all, there's bone in there with all those benefits, and then really easy to eat. You're not like fighting it like with a steak where you might be like having to chew it for ages. That's really my main meal. I eat it twice a day, and I've always been anti-dieting, which sounds kind of crazy coming from a former vegan vegetarian. For me, that was like lifestyle. But I've never wanted to be in the mindset of women that stay on the scale every day, that I've never calorie restricted. I didn't set out on this way of eating to lose weight, though I did want to get control of these inflammation issues, what I would call like, I definitely put on weight, but I didn't feel like, did I gain X number of pounds? It was just more like, I'm blowing up. You know what I mean? Everything is like blowing up. So I did want to have like vital health again and feel like I'm in a dialogue with my body, like what goes in my mouth is affecting. So I've tried intermittent fasting. So no, I'm not doing intermittent fasting. I eat until I am satisfied. I eat until I'm satisfied. I could eat, piles of, we were just at a home barbecue. Someone made these organic, amazing, great quality, well-raised pork, ribs. I mean, I just ate mountains of them. So I don't calorie restrict. I don't fat restrict. I don't sort of time to eat within a certain window. But I naturally, during the week, because of my work schedule, I do wellness coaching, and I have some one-on-one private yoga clients. So I see clients in the morning, toward the end of the day, and then in the middle of the day is sort of open, and I work on these other projects. So I tend to eat my first meal around 11, and I might eat again at 3 and at 5. So I like to eat before I go out. I try not to eat at the end of my day at like 8 or something, but on the weekend, whatever. My boyfriend lives out of the city, so we're together on the weekend. I eat more. I don't restrict, but during the week I do what sort of suits me and, makes me feel good. So, so then, there's this whole oxalate discussion out there and the leaky gut. And I think, yes, probably the root of all of my problems is that I lived on a fully oxalate-laden, lectin-laden diet, particularly spending so much time in India and then cooking in that Indian style. And I was introduced to vegetarianism with a book by Frances Moore Lepay called Diet for a Small Planet. And that was
I remember that. Yes.
When I was in college, and it was at the health store, and I was like, this is a beautiful way to eat. I'm eating for the planet. And it was all about combining grains and pulses, or grains and lentils. And so that's how you got your full protein. So I basically ate that way. When I was in college, a teacher of mine introduced me to macrobiotics, which is a very heavy grain-based, really mostly vegetarian. So there was a lot. I like being part of a kind of boundary pushing out on the edge community. So
well, you're having incredible results. I mean, this is what is happening to people. This is why it just fascinates me, because obviously it turns everything I've been taught too as a health professional too. I've had a homeopathic digestive expert qualifications. I used to do lecture at Hippocrates and colonics and everything. So I've kind of been taught and trained that fiber, we need plants, we need veg, we need a big variety of them. And of course, if you've been doing plant-based there would have been a heavy emphasis on either green smoothies, which again meant lots of kale, lots of spinach, lots of brassicas, lots of cruciferous vegetables, and then leafy greens, even collards and beets and all the rest. So of course that would have piled up a lot of oxalate.
Absolutely.
We've built that up over the years, and that's still coming on. But what I was going to say, just observing you in some of your earlier videos, you look so healthy, and your skin looks so vibrant, and you obviously look like you trimmed down too, because and like you said, it just happens naturally, and this is the appeal of this way of eating for so many people, because it's so freeing. It frees them from having their mind focused on eating all the time, which what happens with carbs and sugars, as you know, you're in this a spiral loop that just never ending of thinking about food, wanting the next, what's happening the next 2 meals. Yeah, and it's so satiating. Yeah. And I was going to ask you about your boyfriend. Did he embrace it?
And I need greens on the plate, and I need root vegetables on the plate. And
Yes.
He's, in India, I need all these things on the plate, and it's like the idea, I don't clean vegetables, I don't peel vegetables anymore, I don't chop vegetables, I don't throw rotting vegetables. I hate wasting food, but invariably running around, living in New York City, vegetables were dying in my refrigerator. And with all of the vegetables I threw away, with all of the potato peels and the butternut squash peels and the seeds and that takes so much time. That's so exhausting. And now it's like, I just put something in the oven and I leave it there for 2 hours and I take it out and I eat it, or I grill something, very quickly. And it's really about having the best fuel. And
it does change that as well, doesn't it? Your perspective on it. And like you said, you're not putting all this time into creating variety in vegetables, because people will probably say to you, don't you get bored just eating fatty meats? But it's odd how it actually satiates you and you don't. It's definitely a biochemical shift takes place in the brain and in the whole body, I feel, once you've gone fat adapted as well.
Absolutely.
And I want to ask you if your boyfriend embraced it as eagerly as you did.
He did.
He did?
You always have the best ideas. I was like, thanks. So obviously he was already eating, in a sense, whatever he wanted, but he always had some kind of like nagging health problems, like athlete's foot, right? Which most men have had since they were 16 years old. And it was like an issue that he couldn't get control of. Well, when he was basically high-fat carnivore, nearly zero carb, that is kind of resolving itself. And just some other issues around, whatever. I don't want to necessarily talk about his issues, but kind of mild things like that.
Yeah. What about digestion? Have you had any constipation or anything? Some people, of course, that's a question that gets asked a lot.
My transition to keto, just going, using an app on my phone and just going very low carb, sort of counting my grams through an app, was counting my grams and trying to have fat at 80% and protein at 20. At first I was like, okay, carbs should be 30 grams or less. And then I was just like, well, if I don't need them, I'm not going to buy them. I'm not going to cook them. I'm not going to excrete them. I'm just going to, cut them out altogether. When I was transitioning, I had terrible constipation. Now, from being in the online groups, I know that I needed more minerals, that the bowel, because there's no fiber in the bowel, the way the water is managed, blah, blah, blah. So, TMI, I had incredibly dry stool that would not budge. And then I added just good quality mineral salt, more salt and water, and I kind of made it to that transition. The other difficult transition that I had was during that maybe like 3-week period, my sweat smelled so bad. I would say as a vegetarian, I didn't sweat a lot, but also I think a lot of kind of bad smelling sweat is from like polyester clothing or,
Yeah.
using dryer sheets and bad detergent, and that's interacting,
Yeah.
Um, but, and now I would say, you know, I feel very clean, so to speak. Like, but there was a 3-week period where my sweat smelled so bad. And I was actually like carrying changes of t-shirts with me. And I'd be like, oh my God, I have to like duck in here and like pull out a washcloth and like just clean my armpits with water and put on a clean shirt. So there was some kind of change there. So that was terrible because I work closely with people. And I was just like, I
That's really
can't.
common. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And it is interesting because most people, and I was the same, you think, oh my God, you're eating meat, you're going to stink, but
right.
you do go through that. And that nearly put me, actually, I did start to include more plants again because when I first changed over in September last year, I did notice I had a body odor that I had nothing before,
Right.
But like you said, it dissipated after a few weeks, and now it's like nothing. It's like, this is really different. So lots of the myths, and they are myths,
They are
propaganda about meat and what it does to you. Once you've experienced it, you see, and this is where the disconnect starts to really, what? Yeah.
In terms of women's health and women who, I mean, all women, particularly say 40 plus, 50 plus, 60, 70 plus, they've been so inundated with messages and news stories that say low fat, meat kills, heart disease. It's very hard, even if women are not vegetarian, vegan, just women in general. My a friend of mine who's, you know, just educating herself about kind of well-rounded health, but she's been like low fat. She's in the fashion industry. She's about 60 years old. She has a fantastic super fit figure. I mean, she trains for 2 hours every morning, and she only eats, for years she lived on like lean chicken breast and broccoli, like meal after meal in a day, 2 meals a day or something. And she said to me, oh my God, your skin looks great. You look, what are you doing? And I said, I'm on a high fat diet. And she was like, she was like, high fat. Like she was terrified.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
it is. It's an assault to the senses. Like I say, it is so been indoctrinated into us, doesn't it?
It is.
For decades, for a lot of people, they don't know any different. So
and
yeah,
then I'm single-handedly destroying the planet because I eat beef, right? Because there's all this misinformation out there about the carbon footprint of the cattle industry, which is starting to be corrected. But so I think the person who is going to come to these changes is because their health is so bad and they feel terrible and they're desperate and they're ready to do it. And that's where I was, and I turned over every stone in the vegetarian and the vegan category. I even went more vegan. I went totally raw vegan. I went out to Optimum Health Institute. I did, wheatgrassing and sprouting.
You weren't doing it right, Kiki.
Right. I was doing it according to Ann Wigmore, so I can tell you I was doing it right.
I know. I mean, those who are now ex-vegans know we were doing it right because the ideology was so intense for us and we wanted to make it work. So it's not like we gave up. We tried everything.
Right.
And that's the common response from vegans. You weren't doing it right. Yeah. But
so I see that like in the yoga community, because just like in a strong vegan community, because of sort of fear of judgment, fear of maybe being put out of the community, and then a kind of almost like a childlike belief, like a faith that, but wait, my yoga teachers in India or the yoga books say that vegetarianism is the path. We're not going to have the clarity of consciousness. If we eat meat, we're going to pollute our mind. We're going to undo our yoga. So I think that's definitely a barrier for people in the yoga world.
Very much so, very much so. And of course, I'm in a Buddhist country, and a lot of the monks do eat meat, and I've seen vegans challenge them. Well, how can you do that? It's just anti everything, you know, with being enlightened and being compassionate and you know, towards animals and people and the whole planet. So yeah, it's a huge challenge, and I always say this: the mental side is the hardest obstacle, because so much we've got to deconstruct. I even have some clients now who are terrified of facts, you know, because but I can't do that. My father had heart disease, and he had a heart attack because of that. And I said, well, what else was he doing? Was he smoking, drinking? Was he eating sugar? Did he? Oh no, not much. Did he well, did he have cakes and breads and chips? And that all turns to sugar. See, these are the things they don't take in as well. But meat gets pinpointed as the culprit, you know, through the media. This is how we're being taught. But it, you know, in all the studies, it's being shown that people were eating lots of other stuff, trans fats and sugar, that's contributed to that. So that's a huge hurdle for people, because we've been really had that drummed into us by the heart associations, American and Australian, that red meat and saturated fat equals a heart attack, right? So it is a big one, particularly when you're older, because you're thinking, am I going to be sacrificing my health? Am I inviting myself into an early grave by doing this? You know, so yeah, and this is why I think, you know, this is why I like these support groups, because people are patient. There's a lot of welcoming and support, and you do have to, you know, take it to advocate. Yeah.
Advocate for our own education and our own information.
Yeah.
And I think now, you know, it's like, if I'm out and about, I don't have to tell people why I'm eating something or not eating something, or how I eat, or because there's so much pushback. People are like, what do you mean you only eat that? What are you talking about? And, you know, to my close friends, I just said, like, you know, that I was having rashes and health concerns and inflammation, and now I'm not. And it's because of this, and this is what I'm doing. And so, you know, they might tease me a little bit, like, oh, the vegan, gluten-free, no sugar, blah, blah, blah. Now it doesn't even touch vegetables. And I feel like, you know, I can lead by example. If someone wants an example. But if people don't want an example, then so be it.
Yeah. And I think being open and being willing to change, if you know, this carnivore thing is quite in its infancy, in a sense, as much as it's gone into a broader part of the population. But, you know, if we learn something that okay, well, maybe we need to do this. If you're open and not stuck in rigidity and dogma, I think that's where, you know, you hit the walls, right? But you've got to be open, and I'm still open to changes. I mean, it's a huge step, but I'm open. I'm open to trying, because ultimately everyone wants good health. They want to feel great. Not one person doesn't. So we're all trying to find the best way for ourselves, you know. And I want to say this point too. I noticed too, your skin and everything, and I think with the fats, and people said to me, it's like your face, your body, it's like it's being injected, it's being filled out with the collagen and everything, you know, because it's just mind-blowing, really. And when you're having these direct experiences, it's really difficult for people to try and convince you that, you know, to come back, because whatever they come at you with, you know that you don't want to go back to feeling that way. You just, why would you? And it's an interesting thing, but you have to, again, experience that with your friends. Like I said, going out and now you're eating what you do, and it's people could see you've gone from one extreme to the other. But again, if you come from this, compassionate, open-minded approach, and that you're just seeking, your own way and better health, and it's bringing it to you, So, yeah.
Yeah, so definitely it's important that my boyfriend also finds the value of eating this way. We kind of like being, sort of these kind of an extreme together. And, so it's good. And I think,
It's great to have that support, isn't it, too?
Definitely great to have the support.
For sure.
Yeah, I feel like, there's such a strong message out there that, well, everyone, the way things are going, everyone's going to get diabetes, everyone's going to be obese. Diabetes means losing a toe or a foot or something like that. And this just becomes normalized. So it's very hard for someone to say, like, well, I'm obese and I have diabetes. Maybe there's something else that I can do. I think that's where the work of Jason Fung, is so important. And, when I think the website meatheals.com is a great website. There's a lot of wonderful testimonials on there. And you're really seeing people who are 500 pounds or 400, 350 pounds losing 100 pounds in a year, 150 pounds in a year, only eating meat. I mean, it's so moving. It's so beautiful.
It is. And also I've been brought to tears on a couple of podcasts. People have had clinical depression for most of their life. And a carnivore way of eating has totally annihilated. It's gone, completely disappeared. And they're in tears because, it's hard for those looking in to understand the misery these people have had to live with, in a sense, and to be seeking out a solution all the time and not wanting to take meds and do that. But the point you brought up earlier about how this way of eating will probably start to help a lot more people is through people's health really starting to fall apart, because the way it's going now, and we've got a 60-year experiment going on here, which we can see it's just absolutely going to the end game, which is more obesity affecting now over half the population, more diabetes, more heart disease from this way of eating of the high carb, which is just abominable. And that's what's going to do it. And so it's a gift, but there is going to be, like you said, and if you can just be an example, I mean, and so it's going to just help so many people. And I love the fact that you've reversed all these things and feeling happy.
I have some lingering insomnia and some lingering earring, which is pretty terrible. But you had spoke to me about the terrible insomnia that you had, and I went through a phase where my insomnia was so bad I really thought I was going to lose my mind, and it was accompanied by terrible tinnitus. And then I read something about vitamin C and histamine or something. I don't even know. I was just like madly looking for something. And I'd been taking a fair amount of vitamin C. But then I looked at every other supplement I had. My vitamin B had vitamin C in it. Like everything that I took had vitamin C. Like they put vitamin C in everything. And I just stopped taking vitamin C and all of these supplements. And that helped to the place where I am now. I'm still throwing away supplements. Like, I'm like, okay, I'm going to throw away these 30 bottles, but I might use these. And then I go in like 3 months later, I'm like, no, now I'm going to throw out these 15 more, but there's only 2 left.
Do you take any at all? Do you take magnesium at all?
I don't. I don't take any. And I used to be on a thyroid medication. I was on a low dose Armour thyroid. And for about maybe 6 years. And every now and then my prescription would run out and I wouldn't take it for 3 or 4 days because I'd be like, oh, I have to fill this prescription. And I would start to get so depressed. And I was like, why am I crying at every movie or whatever? Like, and then I was like, oh my God, my thyroid medication. So I went off my thyroid medication on this high-fat carnivore, and I don't miss it. It's just totally done. I would say there's a lot of people, the way that our healthcare system is set up now is everyone is looking at their numbers, right, and what their levels are. And doctors are, they're not treating diseases, they're treating likelihoods. They're saying like, oh, well, if this figure is here, there's a likelihood of this. So I'm not really chasing those figures. I don't see where anything that a doctor did for me over the last, like a general health doctor did for me, except
I agree. They're all projected outcomes, and really nothing beats your own direct experience, really. And this is why people still go, well, what about this study? And what about this macro and micro? Oh, what's that got to do with experience I'm having? Yeah.
What was your thyroid then, and what is your thyroid now? I'd be like, I have no idea, but I feel fine. I feel more than fine. I feel great.
Yeah. And remember, too, I think, like we were saying earlier about the damage, we've got to give ourselves some time. I think, this in a year for you, would it be coming up to? So, there could be more improvements. Now you've taken, how long have you been doing, mainly fatty kind of, brought that in? Has that been a few months or just fairly recent?
That's more like just maybe 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
And it feels great. The other thing that I noticed, because I live in New York City and I ride a bike a lot, but we had such a terrible winter, I wasn't on a bike as much. So I have a pretty, pretty high fitness level. And so we've had some nice weather. So we have like a good bike share program. So it's like yesterday I jumped on a bike to a client, 3 miles, but 3 miles in and out of New York City traffic. And then I jumped on another one, 3 miles. And then at the end of the day, I was like, I'm going to take a bike 3 miles. So I biked 9 miles yesterday and I didn't feel any effort. And these city bikes are the heaviest bikes in the whole world because they're just like, they're people ride them thousands of times a year. So they're like super durable. They're really heavy. And I just feel more just general strength and energy. So
it's a good feeling having strength when you're older. Yeah. And I think that's really important to maintain. I've realized how important that is. I'm just going to ask you about beverages because people might be thinking that too. So were you just drinking water? Did you have coffee at all? I know a lot of people doing carnivore way of eating do have coffee.
I would say that because of my yoga lifestyle and having a yoga school and traveling to India, I traveled to India 12 times. Often I would go for 3 months, and yoga class started at 4:30 a.m. So I spent about 10 to 15 years waking up at 3 in the morning. So I have a very close relationship to caffeine. So I always, had coffee in the morning or tea, look forward to it. I know that more recently I'm very sensitive to coffee and caffeine. And I have a big project that I'm working on. And so then I'll think, I'll have a cup of coffee at noon, or, I'll just have a little more coffee. It's actually been a big negative for me. And I don't even know if it's from the caffeine. I think obviously it's caffeine, but I think there's other properties there, other anti-nutrients in the coffee. And if I get, so now I have 1 cup of coffee in the morning, and like this week, and then I'm not having any more coffee. And even before this interview, I was like, I'll just brew a cup of coffee. It's a Friday, I can. And I was like, nope, you're not doing it. So I drink water. I have a filtered water system. I have a nice filter system in my home here. and I drink sparkling water, and I do have spirits from time to time. So I do have a glass of red wine or
Okay.
a margarita or something like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
Yeah. Some people remark that they've been having coffee, but it doesn't give them the jitters like it used to when they were vegan. And I thought that was an interesting thing. They felt alert,
right.
really more meat based, but it's not the same real, scattered, jittery kind of.
For me, I would say the
yeah.
that I think I cannot go on. I have to have a coffee now. Like, like I've been up since 3 a.m. and I just taught a 4.5-hour yoga program, and now I have some other stuff to do. Like, I have to have coffee. Like, I'm like crawling into the coffee place and like, slugging that down. So I don't feel that way now.
Yeah.
And I never really drank sodas, and I've been gluten-free for so long, so it's not like I drink beer. I do believe sort of like in enjoying my life, because I led a highly disciplined life, and I really kind of chose to have a very simple life. I had left, I lived in LA, and my ex-husband and I, we lived in a small apartment. I was working as an actress, but then I opened a yoga school. And then I eventually gave up acting and just focused on the yoga school, and traveling to India, living a very lean existence. When I first went to India in the 90s, it was probably like the 1940s. People cooked on kerosene. Women sat on the floor. That's where their stove was. Toilets were outside, squat toilets outside, limited running water, no heat, no hot water. So no refrigeration. So it's like you bought the food for the day, that's what you cooked because it rotted. If you couldn't eat your whole papaya, you went out into the street and the cow came and ate it. So, and then I lived a very simple life. When I had my yoga school, I moved to Hawaii for 3 years from 2005 to 2008, which was just like perfect timing for raw food, cacao, blah, 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 blah. On the big island of Hawaii where I lived, there's so many intentional communities, and almost every one of them is like raw, vegan, eating optional.
Yes, yeah. But do you think too, people have commented that coming to this way of eating, it's like you go full circle, and because you're so in sync with your biological diet, I feel. It also has that minimalistic part that comes in as well, doesn't it, really? Because, like you say, the food becomes fuel. It's not being used to subdue emotions, to comfort you, to, if you're bored and all the myriad of things people use food for. Yeah. It's such a big shift on so many levels, isn't it? And a lot of people don't realise how addicted they are to carbohydrates and sugars.
Right.
And it's not just the sweets, because it's the chips and the corn chips and all that. They all still digest into sugar. And
oh my God, I was such a chip addict. I was just like, just give me these organic corn chips and I'll make a big thing of guacamole, and I'm like in heaven. So I don't feel like that anymore. And so many foods, like I just look at vegetables and I'm like, I'm so not interested. But that could all change. But But
it is freeing right now. And just to finish up shortly, do you feel like your creativity and there's other areas of your life that have kind of expanded?
I do. I definitely do. I've been working for about a year on this project. I created what I consider to be like a really excellent program for yoga teacher success. It's an online program. It's 7 weeks, 7 modules, with videos and PDFs and assessments and surveys and, homework and building out, really an entrepreneurial business with live weekly coaching calls. Yeah. And it's required a lot of work. And I can honestly say that I can see myself doing things now from like the inception of starting it. And I worked with a really great educational platform company called passion.io. My program's Kiki.passion, Kiki at passion.io, is that like how I was kind of getting up to task and fulfilling what I needed to fulfill in the early stages. It was such heavy lifting for me. There's still a lot of tasks that I'm learning and striving at. But I'm much more creative. I'm much more capable. I am much less distracted. I really had such a need for comfort because I was so fried. It was, you know what I mean? Like my body ached all the time. My nerves were like, you know, so I just felt like I have to lie down and take a nap. I have to, you know, kind of turn off the computer and read a book. I have to go to, you know, see an independent film. Like I have to kind of turn off work and support myself in these other ways. And now I just feel like effortlessly creative, and I'm taking on more responsibilities in terms of growing my business, in terms of looking at planning for my future, for security and, you know, stability and financially, things that before I just feel like it's too emotional, I can't deal with it. And I'm really like dealing with a lot more. So I would say I feel more like an adult for sure.
Well, yeah, you're just kind of reiterating what so many people are discovering. It's another whole benefit that people are finding. And it, like you're saying, being able to focus for long periods of time, complete things, and, you know, retrieve information a lot more easily, and learning, and the willingness to want to learn new things, you know, and without going, I don't think I can take this in, or, you know, and all of that. And I think, yeah, it really is, it does cover so many broad aspects of your life that shift and change, and all from just getting the nutrients we've been missing for so long. It's funny when you think about it, really. I mean, we humans make everything so complicated. It's just so simple. Yeah.
We thought we were really the canary in the coal mine, Katya, where we thought we were, you know, first ones in or second ones in, and we were leaders in, you know, cracking the code on wonderful health. And the fact is, we were, but we were misled. So
yeah, we took a deep dive off the cliff that everyone's been on for thousands and thousands of years, thinking we could bring a new revolution of eating with us, and that and we kind of tripped ourselves up in the process, you know. But nonetheless, it's great because we've come around full circle. And yeah, anything else you want to add in before we finish up?
Let's see, what else do you want to add in? I would, you know, I think it's so important. You know, if I were to say something about women, it's like there's so many messages that have come at women from such early ages, girls and women, about how we should be supporting others. And women, you know, through all of the information around us, like even how we should look through fashion magazines, how we should support our families or children or our partner's work, or how we should be acting in a certain way and serving. And at a certain point, I think for women, it's like, you know, I don't have children. I know a lot of women, you know, they kind of go through that empty nest. Their kids have gone off to college, and I have some friends who are just there right now. And I feel like women, it's, you know, be independent, put yourself first, and take some risks that other women are taking, you know, around health and wellness, and chart your own, like women should be charting their own course, and really standing strong in that. And it's like, well, if we fail, we fail, but let's pick ourselves back up and keep going. But health is so precious and life is so precious. It's like we have to have our own mission. You know, every individual has to really uncover their own mission. And for women too, like, what's my mission? It's my time. And what do I need to fulfill my mission? And we need health. We absolutely need health and vitality. And we need confidence, because we have to, if we have a mission, we want to serve. You know, for me, it's like there's over 1 million yoga teachers, and maybe, you know, 30 of them earn a living. And yoga teachers just keep spending $3,000 to $10,000 to take yoga teacher trainings to join a giant unemployed pool. So it's like, well, if I want to help all these people, most of them women, then I have to keep stretching. I have to have a lot of confidence to build out this business and build out this platform and start becoming skilled at marketing to contact, you know, the people that can benefit from this. So confidence comes, real confidence and esteem. We really need our esteem. It comes from nutrition, and to be able to live a life of meaning and to follow our mission, we need support. We need nutrition. We need well-being. And we can look around us and go, okay, the government isn't giving me good nutrition. And these, you know,
we want to be med-free as well, and not have our ladies doing the rounds of doctors, and that becomes our life, you know.
Yeah. So yeah, it's really, you know, when I felt really ill, when I had really extreme B12 anemia and everything, I almost felt like I was dying every day. And it was very hard for me to like get up the energy to even wonder what was next in my life. But we see people all around us, you know, this wonderful filmmaker, John Singleton, who appeared to be in incredible shape. He just died at age 51. And he was very active, and he sailed every single day. And it's like 51, like, we don't know, like, life is short, and we have to live our own life, and we have to share. We have to recognize that we have unique gifts, and we have to share our gifts in the world. So, you know, I would just definitely say, like, in terms of, you know, we need wise women in the world, Katya. So it's wonderful the work that you're doing. And we've always had traditions of wise women. And so when women are over 50, they're over 60, they're over 70, they should be wise and they should be leaders. And people need to look to them. So I would just say, if women are listening, like, that's really the goal, is to have the vitality that you need to be a leader. Because
I agree. I think that's missing a lot in the world today, is wisdom. And I mean, I'm a grandmother, so as well. So I've got that experience of having children and having that. And I think it's wonderful to be able to pass this on, because so many younger people in particular are being denied this accrued wisdom from women who've navigated so many different things in their lives. And life is tougher for a lot of people today. And just, I thought I mentioned too, with Susan Weed, she was a great mentor of mine 30 years ago. So yeah, very wise woman. I learned a lot about herbal medicine through her.
Yes, very wise.
Yeah. So, and this is it. It's just to keep that, preserve the ancestral wisdom and our biological way of living. And that's really, it's really fueled a passion in so many women I'm finding who've become ex-vegan, but they've also, they've found it being birthed into a new fueled, like, passion of either regenerative type of farming, getting involved in that, or whatever it might be that is taking them more closer to nature, even by as I said, going back to their biological diets, quite incredible. But really, I wouldn't have imagined, and I'm sure you wouldn't have, 2 years ago, that you would be eating what you're eating now and where you are now. You probably would have laughed and gone, no way.
No way.
Yeah,
No way.
and look how it's impacted on you, and it really has been a gift, and I hope that just having this wonderful, having this wonderful conversation with you today is certainly going to inspire other women, and to look at perhaps, their diets, what they're eating, what they can take out, and make the connection between the inflammation, the high sugar, the high starch, whether it be vegan or not, but standard diet, whatever, and start to be open to debunking a lot of these myths that we've been taught, because we know from the proof of that it's not working, that it's false, and it's leading us into a terrible place. Whereas if we go back to what's tried and true wisdom that's been around for thousands of years, we can see that we've all evolved on that, and that's where we're going to find true health and well-being, really.
Yes.
So thank you, Kiki. I am so happy that
inviting me on. Thanks for reaching out.
Yeah, and thank you so much for sharing. It's been such a pleasure, and so I'll put your information down below if anyone wants to contact you, particularly with yoga or with any coaching, and they can contact you. So all the best, and I hope you will still keep improving. I'm sure you will with your health.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to that.
Thanks again. I really appreciated your presence today. Thank you so much. Okay, lots of love. Okay, bye.